And we are back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media. Of course, as always, broadcasting on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center. I've kept him waiting for a while, so I want to get right back to us. Another frequent repeat offender is Connor Drigotas. If you're not familiar with Connor, you should be. He has his own website, ConnorDrigotas.com, the easiest website in America to find because there is no one else named Connor Drigotas. But in addition to, as a young man, I have to say that, reaching some of the highest levels academically already, he's teaching courses at I feel one of the great universities in the world, Lehigh University. He's active in corporate communication. He's active as an activist in the libertarian movement, in the liberty movement in general. He writes, I believe, and this is why I'm so happy that he takes some time to join us. I believe one of the really interesting new lights on the liberty movement. Kind of what do you call it when someone's a five-skill player in football? You're a five-skill player, okay? So let's get right to it. First of all, I have to remark, in the week or two since this has kind of happened, we had a conversation about it quickly online, and the events that happened in New York, and you'll get into it, give us a quick description of it, the fact that they're already off the news cycle, an outrageous case, if you will, and again, part of the question is, what are the facts? An outrageous case of and the poster child, potentially for the abuse of the red flag laws, took place. And yet, seemingly, yikes, at least we're still trying to figure out, who's putting up the bet, not that did he hang himself, but who's got the best meme for how he hung himself. We're still talking about Jeffrey. Tell us what happened, and how is this already off the radar?
Yeah, it's unfortunately not a great situation, no matter what way you look at it. And I guess I should be pretty clear up front that one of the things that I'm not here to do is to offer an opinion about who's right and who's wrong, because, like you said, most of the information is muddled, it's unclear. At this point, all that we really know is that there's an individual in upstate New York, about 35 minutes north of New York City, who was involved in a 7-hour standoff with police that may have been an emergency risk protective order or a red flag law. It might have been a domestic dispute, or it might have been a hoax entirely. Regardless, what we saw is two stories unfold. One in which this guy, whose name is Alex Booth, was a hero standing up against the state for his rights, and another where he was a violent domestic abuser who needed to be detained for the safety of his ex-wife and child.
Now, I just want to add, I had Lynn Ulbricht, who is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, on the show last week, and if one wants to, and you cannot, to be responsible, extrapolate one situation to the other, all right? There is no, you can't do that. But if there was ever a case where violent tendencies were portrayed on behalf of someone who was involved in the federal legal system, who then we got the never mind, how many years later, two people come to mind, Ross Ulbricht and, of course, Julian Assange, who all those sex cases, that's the guys in terrible situations, we don't need to bother. That was bureaucratic. So I have to throw that out there because, it's almost out of a bad spy movie. The plot for years was wrongly convicted, Sly Stallone, but this is really happening. So anyway, back to your point, we don't know, do we?
We really don't. And one of the things that as we got together and started to talk about whether or not this was an issue that you wanted to cover because it was so undecided, what I wanted to point out here to your listeners is the importance of narrative to these kind of situations. I think we can be pretty honest. This is not the last time that we're going to see an individual barricaded in their house against police. Right? I mean, we had a situation with a UPS driver today that involved a standoff with police. I mean, this is happening consistently. But regardless of whether or not this particular individual in upstate New York was good or bad or something in between, there is a growing pressure on Americans' right to self-defense. and there's going to be a situation where someone is having their gun rights violated in an unfair manner. What it's going to come down to, though, is how the story gets told. And it's one of the reasons why I have said this before. Communications is one of the most important skills that people who care about liberty can foster and take time to really actually study, is because at the end of the day, those who are looking to take away guns, those who do not respect the right to self-defense of all people, they have an incredible voice in the media. They've been doing this for a long time. It's a fight that they're very familiar with, where people on the liberty side, we aren't as practiced. And especially in a situation like this, it was interesting to see it roll out, because what we got from people who care about liberty was a lot of misinformation. And that's something that needs to be fixed if liberty movement is going to be taken seriously when it comes to the Second Amendment moving forward.
Yeah, you take a story, for example, and to your point, there are so many aspects of today's news that point to the Democratic Party's sophisticated ability to shape messages, talking points, to the point where we openly acknowledge the fact that there's some email that goes to everybody every morning, and they're magically on the same talking points. And at the same time, the ability of the Republican Party to just be so terrible at it. Who announces 2 weeks before Christmas that they're going to, for some, let's be blunt here, legitimate reasons, will allow themselves to be portrayed as nuking food stamps? For the love of God, I mean, just as someone who's a practicing politician, I looked at that and I said, let's step away from the facts for a second. What idiot decided on December 7th or 8th to in the beginning of a difficult weather pattern, and at a time when people are still challenged economically, when the mantra of the narrative, if you will, to your point, is wealth disparity, who decided that was a good way to roll out a significant cut in food stamps?
And to their credit, Democrats have handled it perfectly by narrating the facts here, which is, I can't believe Donald Trump is going to take food away from kids over Christmas break. That's just, and it's going to work. It's one of those things. Kids are one of those topics that develops an emotional connection with very good reason. And it was a terrible decision. I'm not sure what they were getting at.
Well, and the only thing missing, I had a bet with one of my friends, was who was going to come out with the first "more? You want more?" meme. That's and then watching the Democratic congressman go into a full Busby Berkeley-like production of "Food, Glorious Food." But back to the central issue here. You've got, for those folks looking for validation, you've got proof positive of the state's intent. And this is what they're seeing with this gentleman's case. Proof positive that the state's pure intent is to remove guns from people who are good and deserve them. That the state is inventing a situation where they can go out and begin at least the early stages of gun confiscation. That's what you've got on one hand. And then you've got, on the other hand, this notion that this person was dangerous at home. Critique, if you will, what was clearly the bumbled efforts from the New York State Police and the New York law enforcement authorities. I mean, what happened there? How could you wipe out websites? And this is just, you're taking the heart of the conspiracy. They call themselves now, by the way, conspiracy realists, not conspiracy theorists. You're taking the heart of the conspiracy realists' darkest beliefs and putting them right on front page. How did that happen?
It's an interesting situation, and one of the great things about decentralized media is that you are in a position, like this gentleman was, where you can control your own narrative to a certain extent. This whole situation unfolded because Alex Booth put an Instagram photo up with him saying that he was basically fearing for his life because of the actions of police officers, right? So you're able to create a media cycle out of almost anything. He could have been sitting in his house completely alone and said that, and perhaps many of the same things would have unfolded, maybe not to that degree, but anyone sitting in their house with the right following can cause a ruckus very easily. So what's interesting here is that the media, traditional media, was able to get what they wanted very quickly, meaning that they were able to get quotes, they were able to run stories that clearly labeled this individual as someone who is a risk to themselves and others, and put their facts in line, get their facts into the media, and then move on to the next topic. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, what's happened with folks who are on the other side that would seek to view this through the lens of an anti-liberty moment in time, or something, a call to action for people to be more aware and step up and protect their Second Amendment rights, is they threw out unsubstantiated information that became mainstream, that even if a portion of what happened was true, and we don't know what happened, a police department took down their website. There's no public record right now without a Freedom of Information request about whether or not this individual is even still held in New York anymore. We just don't know. But by putting out these points that are so beyond reasonable, by the time you get down to the actual facts, those who care about liberty, those who want to care about the rights of self-defense, they're not speaking from a place of credibility. And yes, in this situation, it might be a short-term damage, but in the long term, credibility is everything. If this had been a situation where perhaps cooler heads had prevailed and a pro-liberty voice was able to get into more mainstream media and actually speak with the local news stations, offer a more informed opinion, I think this story could have had legs a little bit longer than it did. And it could have been started a debate that cared more about, hey, why aren't we caring about the rights of every single person to protect their own lives?
Right. What's it going to take for that to happen, though? Now, I look at someone like yourself, a young leader in the movement. Communications is the focus of your professional life, not just your political one. And you do it at a high level, short of cloning you and a handful of other people, short of, essentially, putting you in a box and driving you around the nation. How do we take that next step? Right now, the liberty movement is characterized largely by a lot of podcasts, some streaming shows, general information shows like this. How do we break through that barrier both it's chicken and egg in a sense. Professionalism will breed acceptance. Acceptance, of course, will breed the financial resources to encourage professionalism. What do we have to do as a movement because it's clear to me that the quote-unquote mainstream media is not really in a rush on a large scale. We're fortunate here in Rhode Island. The news actually comes to libertarians on certain issues, to talk to us. We've got another stadium project going up here in Rhode Island that they want to talk about. And a couple of folks from the media were nice enough to reach out to our organization and give us some airtime on TV. But what do we do? I know I just threw out like an alphabet soup of a situation at you, but I think it accurately reflects what we're facing as a movement right now.
Yeah, I think it could be summarized in one word: education. We're in a very lucky position, and people who care about liberty, we tend to be able to find allies, not on everything, but on specific issues on both the left and the right. Mm-hmm. So if it's the Second Amendment, for example, and you want to learn how to do messaging, you should be reaching out to the Leadership Institute in Washington, D.C., where you can take classes for pennies and get multiple days of live on-camera training, and they'll teach you how to approach these situations. If you're on the left and you're looking at a decriminalization movement, reach out to left-leaning or training organizations and enroll in their free classes. Get a scholarship, travel spend a night in D.C. or in the closest city to you, where you can actually go and meet with other people who are doing this successfully, who already have those resources, and then take them, move it back, and apply those lessons every single day. Credibility cannot be overstated. Over the course of time, when we get people who are, stripping on a stage at a convention or anything, that can set people back, right? Because what you want is when a libertarian steps up to a microphone, the first thing that you would hope that would come to someone's mind is, this is a principled person who cares about liberty. And right now, I'm just not sure that that's the case as a blanket statement.
Because, of course, it ties into elections. We have a presidential election coming up. I'll say this, I'll just keep it generic. As the South Carolina debate, some folks did a better job than others. Interestingly enough, it's my conviction that the clear parity candidate can at times be very, very effective at conveying his message. The question, of course, is which libertarians like the message or not. But there's an irony there that the one who's considered a space shot until you actually sit down with him and interview him or put him in a debate situation is sometimes the most on message of all of them. Now, I mean, I personally have my beliefs that a couple of candidates did very well, but without naming names, how would you, what kind of, and I don't want to put you on the spot, how do I dance around this?
I might be able to help you out, actually.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
My focus is not on the presidential election in the Libertarian Party. Mm-hmm. Speaking frankly, I'm not sure that there's anyone up there right now who can make an argument for viability. And in the meantime, that could be $9 million going to train local candidates, in my mind, instead of going towards some national campaign. Mm-hmm. That's where we're able to make a difference, right? I live in Pennsylvania. We can claim right now that Pennsylvania has more elected libertarians than any other state in the country. We have the county with the most elected libertarians of any county in the country. And one of the ways that has come to be is that there's been a renewed focus on going to trainings and actually going to organizations like Americans for Prosperity, who runs a grassroots leadership academy. And libertarians may or may not agree with a lot of what Americans for Prosperity does, but what an amazing opportunity to spend a total of about 7 full days learning from some of the best in the business. So that is the result that we see at the local level. And it's my hope that even if those folks are on stage and they're putting out amazing content, that the focus will be on local elections where people can make a real human connection. Because I think that's what's going to win in the long run. Right.
The challenge, of course, is ballot access, ballot access, ballot access. Yep. Therein lies the exigent threat to the party in general. The fear that we have a sub 1% or sub 2% national election will be spun by people in the duopoly as they'll point that out as testimony to the quote unquote failure of the libertarian movement. Again, you and I, you're right. The correct answer to build the movement long term is to get people elected at the board level, the water board, the school board, the taxa board, you name it, and then support them to the best you can so that they can they can, dare I say, as libertarians, govern in a way that's reflective of libertarian philosophy and not be the caricature that some people want to convince in their messaging that we will be. The scare tactics wouldn't be prudent. You're going to give out, I had a gentleman named Anthony Pires, I think it was his name, who's in a debate on a television show, start to talk to me about the libertarian movement being an 18th century agrarian movement. And the trouble is, if you're an establishment figure and you've got quote unquote your establishment, then people go, well, the libertarian movement's an agrarian. I'm not even sure where that came from.
It does a very effective job making libertarians seem outdated. Why would you vote for them? Because they're no longer relevant, right? And it's an effective tool that, unfortunately, both of the major parties use all the time.
Right, absolutely. So, where do we stand now? I've only got a couple minutes left, and with this, what should libertarians take away from this event?
I definitely say take the time to really examine your own credibility and the credibility of the sources that you're looking at. In the long term, if you're trying to convince people of your point of view, you need to be the type of person that people are going to trust. Mm-hmm. That starts today, if not yesterday, right? It's a long-term process to build trust, and it can be lost almost instantly. In our digital world, we're lucky in that there's a lot of content, so past mistakes put them behind you. They're going to be forgotten in the digital world. That's okay. Focus on doing the right things today, and it'll pay you dividends in the future as you look to spread the message of liberty across your state and across the country.
Outstanding. It's I think that's the only thing we can do at this point. I think past embarrassments need to become past embarrassments. They'll be resurfaced, but if you if you were a subject to or inclusive of a past embarrassment, you need to take the time to formulate a response and a position.
Yep.
And it could be something as innocuous as when I was young and foolish, I was young and foolish. And then have a picture handy of one of these lunatics at the Republican conventions, dressed up as a bald eagle with a face of Trump on their rump. That rhymes. You can do that and diffuse the argument. Or have an impassioned statement ready as to exactly why you did that and say something reflective. That probably wasn't the best way to do it, to take my clothes off on stage. But at the same time, I've demonstrated, I think as Mr. Weeks, I don't agree with all Mr. Weeks' policies by any sense, but my sense, having met him a couple of times now, is that, and he doesn't need me to put words in his mouth, but my sense is given the opportunity, he wouldn't have done it. And given the opportunity, he'd much rather focus on his sometimes unique perspective of the libertarian movement. But he has, I think, done the most important thing that anyone could do in a situation like that, which is to not slink away in shame, but to really face the adversity right in the eye and move forward. Clinton taught us that, right? Now, we only got literally 3 minutes. The last time we spoke, I was talking about the inevitability of some senator from Massachusetts. Oh, my God. Okay. I guess my punditry future is pretty much dead. Buttigieg. Beetlejuice. He seems to have survived you talk about crisis management, all these videos resurface. He seems to have survived the great, I actually was friendly to a Tea Party person at a Tea Party rally moment. I'm not sure if you saw that one or are familiar with that one. But, a tape resurfaced of him speaking to a Tea Party. And it's interesting because I listened to most of it, and he never really agreed with them, but there are those who, in his movement, the very notion that he was in the same building with those folks is enough. If you go back to your Maoist Cultural Revolution, send him right to the re-education camp. I mean, people were actually saying he was finished. He's finished. And Kamala Harris, who was at some level still operative, some people, as they like to say, thought she had it all locked up, but it didn't. And now she's gone. So what does this portray in our 2 minutes left for Mr. Buttigieg?
Well, I know you said Buttigieg has survived, but I'm going to argue that he's thrived. Honestly, he continues to take the high road while everyone else is playing in the mud. He's made a strong push toward a religious crowd, which can be important in key states across this country. He's showing strong grassroots support. And like the example you just said, if anything, he's showing that he can cut across party lines. Right now, in my opinion, the biggest obstacle he's going to have is convincing Democrats that he's a good choice at the convention. If he can get past that, I do believe that he'd be a strong contender in a general election. One of the further examples of that, though, that might play in his favor is you may have seen he was recently endorsed by 3 former Obama officials, Reggie Love, Austin Goolsbee, and Linda Douglas, who all came out and said, having worked with the Obama administration, this is our guy, and he's going to be able to take us all the way.
I mean, that's stunning stuff. I mean, he can play the reason. He doesn't wear the military status on his sleeve, but he's not afraid to defend it and actually embrace it. And for everyone who thinks that a mayor of a small, moderate, medium-sized city can't get elected, well, one need only look at William Jefferson Clinton. Who would have thought that a governor of a state like Arkansas could be president? Biden continues to. I mean, I think the official I'm politically obscure, have no relative relevance whatsoever moment of the week had to be when John Kerry endorsed Joe Biden. you know, and no one cared. What was remarkable is that 8 years ago, that would have been earth-shattering. Absolutely no one cares. You know,
Yep.
you be you, Mr. Kerry, wherever you are, knock yourself out. Who's left that could contend with him?
I think it's going to come down. Again, my opinion here, Biden, Buttigieg, and Warren are going to be chopping it out at the end of the day. It's going to be a matter of who can get the delegates at the convention to make that choice. But I will point out again, I am bullish on Buttigieg, and I have been for a while now. In the Hill, they just put out an article that said the knives come out for Buttigieg, and the entire article only focused on Biden's criticism. And his only criticism was that Buttigieg's health care proposal was too similar to his own. So to say that that's the harshest thing that the Democrats are going to roll out against him at this point, as he makes a strong push in early primaries, I think he keeps looking better as the season progresses.
Well, and you know what happens cumulatively on fundraising. The minute you're deemed relevant or non-relevant, you know, it slides downhill very quickly. It's interesting to note that and feel free to debate me on this, the first three most important, if you will, primary/caucuses are not in traditional progressive strongholds, but really represent middle America. Iowa, you know, obviously with his homage to the farmer class, New Hampshire and South Carolina, where, again, to me, his ability to get the warm embrace, well, I should say it this way. If the Bible Belters can find a way to rationalize support for Donald Trump, in the name of God, literally, you know, the Democratic equivalent of same, I've got to believe, can happen in South Carolina. It all comes down to the black vote. And, you know, his ability to translate that into results for himself. What helps him is that there's really no one else left who's going to get the warm embrace of the black. I mean, I see Biden, quite frankly, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'll be wrong again in a week or two until we see each other next, but I don't think Biden makes it past. I think it's clear, and I'm not an ageist. Hell, I'm older than you. But it's clear Biden, I don't think has got the staying power.
That's a no malarkey take right there from you. That's that's very true.
I don't think Biden really makes it, because the first sign of electoral weakness, his fundraising is already on very, very shallow ground, and then it just becomes Warren versus Mayor Pete. And a month or two ago, I would have said Warren all the way. I can't say that anymore. So you may very well be right. We will, the next time we get together, we will finally double down and put a bet in place. I'm going to hold you to that, and we'll take it from there. Well,
awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, no, thank you for your patience tonight. You know what programming these things are like. It's a challenge. You get on a roll with someone, you look up and, you know, an hour's gone by. Everyone who comes on this show remarks that, you know, I didn't think I could fill up an hour. You and I could probably go strong for another 2 hours, you know, particularly if root beer or beer was involved. But listen, again, the same sentiment as I had for the good professor. Thank you so much for being part of the show this year. I want to knock heads with you, you know, during or after the Christmas holidays, and come up with ideas that we can take this to the next level in the spring. You know, it's your perspective and your insight into, I think, perhaps sadly, the most ignored part of our movement, if you will, is critical, and I think we just need to do whatever we can to promote your work into being a key ingredient of what, not just what happens in 2020, but going forward, because that's the only way to success in the future, is to find a way to professionalize our efforts. If we don't professionalize our efforts, 10 years from now, 12 years from now, we'll still be the party of 2 or 3%. People have worked hard to get to even that level. I don't diminish that, but I think we all know we're capable of so much more. So God bless you, lad. All right?
Thanks so much. Have a great night.
All right. We are going to wrap it up there. 5 minutes late as always. Sorry, guys. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage, poor, and free. Civilly Disobedient Media, broadcasting live here at the Worldwide Coalition News Center. A big thanks to ConnorDrigotas.com, Connor Drigotas. A big thanks to the professor. A big thanks to all our guests tonight, the good doctors. We're blessed to have great sponsors, Air Sciences, Yacht Club Soda, Beacon Shipping and Logistics. Listen, they're all up on our website. If you have an opportunity to work with them at any level whatsoever, I would be grateful because, quite frankly, it takes a lot of stones to sponsor this type of conversations in real time and put your name up there. I am grateful for them, and coming into the new year, we all could work to promote those local business owners, those Liberty businesses that tacitly, quietly, financially support our efforts. You have a lot of places you can spend your Friday night. We're grateful that you did here. We'll be back next week. Stay tuned.